Okay, so this is the story of two women. One is this super wealthy heiress, born into a media empire. The other, a gun-toting revolutionary and a wanted bank robber. But here's the craziest part. They're the same person. Today, we're going to dive into the absolutely wild and captivating case of Patty Hearst, a story where privilege, radical politics, and a completely shattered identity all collided in a way that honestly still messes with our heads today. So just look at this. On one side, you have Patricia Hearst. She's 19, the granddaughter of the media tycoon William Randolph Hearst. She is the picture of American aristocracy. And on the other side, that's Tania, an urban guerrilla, a member of a radical group, and a wanted criminal. I mean, these two images just don't compute. So the question that absolutely gripped the nation was, how on earth could they be the same person? And that is the question that just captivated America back in the 1970s. Her story really forces us to look in the mirror and ask, what are any of us capable of when we're pushed to the absolute limit? And where is that line between making a choice and being psychologically forced into something? All right, so let's set the scene. Our story kicks off on what seemed like a totally normal night in 1974, with the one violent event that set this whole crazy thing in motion: the abduction of Patty Hearst. This was the moment a symbol of the American elite was literally dragged from her world and turned into a hostage. So, on February 4th, 1974, Hearst is violently kidnapped right out of her Berkeley apartment. The group behind it, the Symbionese Liberation Army, or SLA, they quickly take credit. But here's the thing. They didn't just want some quiet ransom payment. No, they demanded that the incredibly wealthy Hearst family fund this huge food giveaway for the poor. They were deliberately turning this kidnapping into a public, political show designed to humiliate the establishment. So who were these guys, her captors? Well, the SLA was this tiny but really fiercely militant group born out of all the political chaos of the 70s. They were led by this charismatic but totally controlling guy, Donald DeFreeze, and they were a real fringe organization that mixed revolutionary ideas with some very cult-like behavior. And their ultimate goal, it was audacious, to say the least. They wanted to spark a full-blown guerrilla war right inside the United States. For 2 months, the public just saw Patty Hearst as a victim, right? A poor little rich girl. But then came the most shocking twist in the story. A voice on an audio tape that just completely shattered that narrative and turned a kidnapping case into this deep psychological puzzle. 2 months after she was taken, the SLA releases a tape. But instead of a desperate plea for help, the world heard Patty Hearst's voice, sounding calm and determined, announcing that she had joined her captors. She had a new name, Tania, and she said, quote, "I have chosen to stay and fight." I mean, that announcement sent an absolute shockwave across the country. Had she converted? Was she being coerced? Was she a victim? Or had she actually become one of them? Hearing her voice was one thing, but seeing it, that was a whole different level. Weeks later, this iconic security camera photo comes out, and it shows Hearst, now fully Tania, holding a rifle during an SLA bank robbery. The image was undeniable. Her transformation, whatever was behind it, was terrifyingly real. And just like that, with that new identity, Patty Hearst went from being a victim to one of America's most wanted fugitives. This kicked off a massive manhunt and, eventually, a landmark legal battle that basically put the idea of free will itself on trial. The hunt for the SLA was intense and it was violent. In May of '74, there's this fiery shootout in LA, broadcast live on national television, that kills 6 key members of the group. And incredibly, Patsy wasn't there. For more than a year, she and the rest of the members stayed one step ahead of the law, before the FBI finally tracked her down and arrested her in San Francisco in September 1975. Her trial became this battleground for 2 completely different realities. The prosecution, they painted her as a willing radical who eagerly jumped into the SLA's violent cause. But the defense argued that she was a victim of systematic brainwashing, that she had been put through such intense abuse in isolation that her own identity was basically erased and rebuilt by her captors. You can tell even the legal system itself had no idea what to do with her. While the jury did convict her and she was sentenced to 7 years, the story doesn't end there. After just 22 months, President Carter commuted her sentence, letting her out of prison. And then, decades later, President Clinton granted her a full pardon. That's a final act that really suggests that, at the highest levels, there was this powerful belief that she was, ultimately, a victim.
So this whole legal saga just makes this central mystery even deeper. How do we even begin to explain the unthinkable transformation of Patty Hearst? Well, the answer probably isn't in law books. It's in the really complex psychology of coercion and trauma.
The term you hear most often when talking about her behavior is Stockholm syndrome. And what that is, it's a psychological defense mechanism. Think of it this way. Under these terrifying, isolating conditions, a hostage starts to identify with their captors. It's a survival tactic. For Patty Hearst, it likely wasn't about agreeing with their politics. It was probably an unconscious strategy to just endure unbearable trauma by bonding with the only human contact she had.
So why are we still talking about this all these years later? Because this case forces us to deal with some huge questions. It's a chilling study of what trauma can do to the human mind. It completely blurs the lines between being a victim and being an accomplice. And it just perfectly captured the anxieties of a really turbulent decade.
When you boil it all down, the story of Patty Hearst is this powerful and frankly unsettling reminder of how fragile our own identities can be. It shows us just how far someone can be pushed when their very survival is on the line, forcing them into a reinvention that most of us can't even begin to imagine.
And that leaves us with the one question that just hangs over this entire case, a question that has no easy answer and is blurred by trauma and fear. In these situations of extreme coercion, where does victimhood end and where does complicity begin?